Welcome to CivilNet. Our guest today is Levon Isakhanyan. He is a lawyer and a political scientist from Georgia, and he is also the head of the legal department of the Armenian Church in Georgia. Welcome, Levon.
Thank you.
You've been here for 2 weeks, and you're going back tomorrow to Georgia, as far as I know. Yeah. What can you, I mean, Georgia has come out of elections like almost 2 months ago. What is the atmosphere inside the Armenian community? How does the Armenian community perceive the new changes in Georgia?
So first of all, let me tell you a little bit about the community. As you might know, we have some 250,000 Georgian citizens of Armenian origin living in Georgia, and the Armenian community is the third largest community in Georgia after Georgians and Azeris. Armenian community is divided into two sub-communities, the Armenians of Javakheti and Armenians of the rest of Georgia. I will tell you a bit later about this division of the Armenian community in Georgia, and the perception of new government at these elections is actually, I would say, as always, positive, because Armenian community perceives the Georgian government as the guarantor of the well-being of the community as such. And it doesn't. Well,
that's the case with all the Armenian communities all around the world, scattered around the world. But directly after the election, there was an announcement by the newly elected Prime Minister, and it was not welcomed by wide circles of Armenians. True.
Actually, I know you mean most probably the announcement of Mr. Ivanishvili concerning the incomprehensibility of why Armenians are living in Georgia when they have their motherland just next to Georgia. Actually, Mr. Ivanishvili, he said after this press report that it was not his announcement, that he didn't say that it is not understandable for him why Armenians live in Georgia, but he said that for him it was incomprehensible from his subjective point of view when he was living in France before, how can a person live outside of his motherland if he has his motherland. But what mass media reported, as he said later, it was not true. It was not, it was a kind of misinterpretation of what he had said before.
And speaking about church and state relations, we heard lately that the legal status of the Armenian church has finally changed and it was upgraded. Can you speak to us about that, please?
Yes, actually this is one of the most important issues for the community today. Actually it was not upgraded, it was granted to the Armenian church, because before we didn't have any legal status under the Georgian jurisdiction. After the restoration of the Georgian statehood, only the Georgian Orthodox Church, which is the majority church, had the possibility to,
and none others,
none others, to work as a legal entity. All the other religious denominations, including the Armenian diocese in Georgia,
and the Vatican,
and the Catholic Church, and the Baptist Church, Lutheran Church, Muslim community, Jewish community, etc., they didn't have any kind of legal recognition. In July 2011, the Parliament of Georgia adopted a law. The Parliament adopted amendments to the Civil Code of Georgia, and in virtue of these amendments, the Armenian community, as well as other religious denominations, they got the legal entity, the status of legal entity of public law. But there is one problem in this amendment. In the first part of this article, it said that the religious organizations which have historical ties with Georgia or are recognized as religious organizations in other member states of the Council of Europe can be granted legal status of legal entity of public law. However, their rights and responsibilities are regulated by the law of Georgia on legal entities of private law. So from legal point of view, it's complete nonsense, because if legal entity is a legal entity of public law, then the rights and responsibilities should be regulated under any kind of jurisdiction under the same law which regulates the status of such a legal entity. But actually it was decision taken by the parliament, and the parliament is the highest representative body of the country, and nobody could influence this decision. That's why they took this decision like this, and then we accepted the possibility of being granted status of legal entity of public law, and on March 12, 2012, we registered as legal entity of public law.
Mm-hmm. And how do you think that will affect the problem of the so-called disputed Armenian churches in Georgia?
Actually,
legal status.
Yes. Actually, the problem of the so-called disputed churches is also one of the main problems for the Armenian community in Georgia. And unfortunately, the modification of the legal code doesn't affect at all, doesn't tackle the issue of restitution of property confiscated during the Soviet period from religious organizations. As you know, the Georgian diocese, the Armenian diocese in Georgia has been active in Georgia since 5th century, so it has quite a long history. And during all these centuries, it had always quite significant property. And during the Soviet period, the Soviet government confiscated the property from the Armenian diocese as well as from other religious denominations. And after the restoration of the state independence, the government, in plural, because not only one government, but all the governments of Georgia, they expressed their political will to make the restitution of the property confiscated only from the Georgian Orthodox Church, from the majority church, while all other religious denominations, the Armenian Church, Catholic community, and all others, they were unable to secure the restitution of the property confiscated during the Soviet period. And this law doesn't tackle at all the issue of restitution of property and restitution of the so-called disputed churches. And in this case, when we, the Armenian diocese, is talking about the disputed churches, so-called disputed churches, we mean now we are talking about 6 churches. 5 of them are in Tbilisi and 1 in Akhaltsikhe in the region of Samtskhe-Javakheti. And out of the 5 churches which are in Tbilisi, 2 are already in ruins. And in May 2012, just 5-6 months ago, we had the bell tower of another church, the Strugnashan church in the very center of Tbilisi, was also it collapsed. So, and all this happens first of all because of the negligence on the side of appropriate state institutions to preserve the cultural heritage of the state. Actually, we believe that the Armenian churches in Georgia represent also the cultural heritage of the Georgian state. And if something happens to the Armenian churches in Georgia, it damages also the cultural heritage in general of the state. And
does the state also think the same way?
As we see, unfortunately, no, because if it's not the same way, then we wouldn't have the problems of the collapsed churches or collapsed bell towers of the churches.
Regarding the Armenian community, and you said in the beginning about the there are 2, it can be classified into 2 groups: the Chavakheti Armenians, Chavakh Armenians, and the non-Chavakh Armenians, right? It seems that every group has each has its problems. We spoke about the Tbilisi Armenian problems or the Georgia Armenian problems, where there is the Chavakh Armenians.
I would say that from a political point of view and from legal point of view, there are no 2 different Armenian communities in Georgia. There is only one Armenian community, which comprises Chavakh Armenians, Tbilisi Armenians, Rustavi Armenians, Batumi Armenians, Kakheti Armenians, all the Armenians. But from the so-called practical point of view, there are 2 communities, and in this case, I could also say that there is Chavakh Armenian community and non-Chavakh Armenian community in Georgia. And why? the main problem which the Javak Armenian community face is the lack of knowledge of Georgian language, of the only state and only administrative language in Georgia, which is applicable in the Javakheti region. I'm not talking about Abkhazian language for Abkhazia in this case, it's another case. So they don't speak Georgian language, and as far as they do not speak the state language, they are deprived of any possibility of participation in public affairs, because the only administrative language in Georgia is Georgian. If you do not speak Georgian, then you are deprived of possibility to be hired in public
universities.
That's true. No, you are not deprived of possibility to go to universities, because recently the Georgian government, the previous government, adopted some affirmative action measures, so-called affirmative action measures, meaning the so-called positive discrimination of the Armenian community from Javakheti and Azeri community from Koimokarli region. And for representatives of these two communities, there is 5% quota foreseen for these categories of students. So this is positive. However, the issue of the lack of state knowledge of the state language in Georgia for Javakheti Armenians is a very specific issue for them.
It's a primary issue.
Yes, because if they do not speak Georgian language and they cannot participate in public affairs, they cannot be hired in public offices, then they naturally can ask for introduction of Armenian language at local level as an administrative language. And when they were asking to this introduction of Armenian at local level as administrative language, some politicians, mass media, and representatives of the Georgian society were considering this as separatism, because for them it was a kind of first step for future succession. But from objective point of view,
so there is also political pressure.
Yes, if people do not speak the state language, they naturally will seek a possibility to realize themselves. And in their perception, this was one of the ways of self-realization. It was not the only way, because they have always been asking to the government to intensify the efforts of popularization and instruction of state language in the region, of Georgian language in the Javakheti region. And the fact that after more than 20 years of state independence, the one significant part of the Georgian society doesn't speak the state language, this, in my opinion, proves the systemic problem which comes from the side of appropriate state institutions.
Final question. What can the Armenian state do for Georgian Armenians, and it is not doing it?
Actually, the Armenian state should intensify the cultural ties between the Armenian community of Georgia and the historical motherland of Armenians in Georgia with Armenia, and this would be the best thing that the Armenian state could do for the Armenian community in Georgia.
Thank you, Levon Isakhanyan. Thank you for watching CivilNet.